All right, welcome back. Just breezing through hour two here of a Wednesday edition of Liquid Lunch. And you're watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. Hello to all our friends out there on social media as well. And if you're not following us, go to our YouTube and our Instagram and all that stuff and follow, because we got some games that we're going to start playing. So we'll tell you more about that a little later in hour two. But John Banzhaf joins us right now. He's a professor of law at George Washington University Law School. And John, I think the markets are getting banged around on mixed signals on how viable a vaccine will be. They come out and say, hey, there'll be a vaccine by November, and then the market feels a little safer. And then this pledge comes out, and some AstraZeneca slowed down. You say this pledge that the vaccine makers are making is just as a 50-50 shot it'll work.
Would you trust vaccine makers to guarantee the safety of their product any more than you guarantee the NRA to guarantee their members would be very responsible using assault weapons? I don't think so. By the way, the test that they're proposing is it's got to be 50% effective. Well, that's like a flip of a coin, or like playing Russian roulette when you have 3 bullets out of 6 in the chambers. They also say they won't approve it unless it's substantial evidence. But in any medical study, we talk about not substantial evidence, but a 95% confidence limit. You can't get your study published in a major medical journal unless you got a 95% confidence level, which means you are only 5% chance that the results are inaccurate. So in view of this and the many mistakes and problems and misrepresentations that the FDA has already made, and then suddenly we have what we in Washington call a October surprise. Sure, a lot of people are not trusting either the manufacturers or, more importantly, the FDA. They're saying there ought to be some kind of independent commission, and only then will people trust it. And if they don't trust it, they're not going to get the vaccine, even if it's there, even if somehow it's available. And we can't return to normal unless most people are trusting and get that vaccine.
Look, I think, me personally, I think that someone, president, the head of the Senate, the head of the House of Representatives, if they're going to allow a vaccine to come out, Bill Gates, they should say, I'm giving it to my grandkid first. And then I think, then we would know at least a little better. But yeah, it is like the NRA saying, hey, you know what, let everyone have a gun and only half of them will work. Right?
Again, the other analogy I used is, would you trust Hell's Angels if they made a pledge that all of their members would always obey the traffic rules? I don't think so.
No,
I don't think at this point most people would trust the FDA. There are a growing number of experts who are saying we need an independent commission. And unless and until there's an independent commission, one not made up of government employees or people who are getting grants from the very vaccine makers who they're vouching for, I think these trust will be there. We have surveys that show, I think it's almost 80% of the public doesn't trust the FDA. They think that the decisions will be based more on politics than upon hard science. Many of them are saying they wouldn't even get it before this arose. Suddenly the president said, hey, contrary to every expert so far, we're going to have it just before Election Day. Does that increase your confidence?
No, that decreases my confidence immensely. Yeah. It sounds like, it's being driven by political motivation, which makes me sick. You say many people are calling for an independent commission. Who else that's notable is out there calling for this?
Well, you probably wouldn't recognize the names. I'm not sure I would, but I listed about half a dozen major researchers in this area, people who are epidemiologists, experts in infectious diseases. And they are all calling for an independent commission. They're asking the FDA to set it up. Quite frankly, I don't think this FDA is going to do it. What I'm suggesting is that if major reputable medical organizations like the AMA or the American College of Physicians said, we're going to recommend to our members that they not participate in vaccine distribution unless and until an independent commission says it's safe and effective. That would do it. And by the way, one of the things I pointed out is, as a torts expert, is that doctors go ahead and do give out this vaccine with all the suspicion and reasonable doubt as to whether it'll be safe and effective. If somebody has an adverse reaction or even just comes down with COVID after having been vaccinated, they may be facing a lawsuit. So I think it'll be in the interest of the AMA and its membership to say, wait, we don't trust the FDA. We want an independent commission. This has become so politicized. There has to be clear public trust, not guesses, not pledges, and so on.
Got it. All right. And then there are critics out there like Catherine Stevenson from the Harvard Medical School, bioethicist Arthur Kaplan from NYU, say they're skeptical and it's unlikely to trust the FDA or an advisory committee because many of their members are driven by pharmaceutical companies.
Exactly. You wouldn't trust the NRA's advisory committee or the Hells Angels advisory committee. My guess is you probably wouldn't trust an advisory committee from the tobacco industry, maybe even the banking industry.
Yeah, you're
and here
right.
We're talking literally about life or death. We're not talking about being screwed a little bit by a secret bank charge or something like that. Do you want to bet your life on this FDA? No. The commissioner has deliberately misrepresented the effectiveness of one of the treatments. I don't think so.
So you think the FDA is being pushed by the executive branch to hurry something up here?
Not only do I think so, a lot of other people think so. And let me make a very important point. When many people think of a regulatory agency, they tend to think it's independent, like the Federal Communications Commission or the Federal Trade Commission. They can't be fired by the president. But the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA in charge of approving this, he serves at the pleasure of the president. He could be fired at any time for no reason at all.
Well,
so
I'm sure he got there.
The thumb of trust of Trump.
I'm sure he got there by, leading a largely ethical career. And if you were being asked to something that he thought would kill people, he'd probably step down.
Well, one would hope so, and some of the people have in fact said they would step down. But there are a lot of people who, if they are threatened with being fired from a very prestigious position, may be willing to bend the rules a little bit one way or another. Improving something with a 50% chance of effectiveness, flipping a coin, substantial evidence rather than 95% confidence, you're betting your life on it. Everybody out there, all of your listeners and viewers, are going to have to decide whether or not they trust this FDA serving at the behest of the president and having deliberately misrepresented the effectiveness of one of the treatments. Remember when they approved hydrochloroquine just after the president said, hey, that's a thing you ought to look into.
Right. Well, let me just say this. When I hear, so you're saying what they're pledging here is to only approve the vaccines if there is substantial evidence, right? That's the key term in there.
Substantial evidence in law doesn't even mean 50-50.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I can have substantial evidence that somebody has stolen something. That will get me a search warrant, but I couldn't convict somebody on it. I couldn't even prove it by what we call a preponderance of the evidence. Substantial evidence, that's not the standard in medicine. It's not the standard in science. And I don't want to bet my life on it.
Doc, Professor, I have been on, financial cases, subject matter expert in many class actions, right? And there was this really big one against a whole bunch of custodial banks brought by pension plans and retirees. And it all came down to this term, reasonable grounds. And the more I learned as being an expert around this is one of the slimiest terms in law when determining a benchmark, reasonable grounds, because you can actually get out like 7 layers and have to weigh in on whether this decision maker thought there were reasonable grounds. And when I hear substantial evidence, it sounds like another legal trapdoor. Like you could just,
It is exactly that. But of course, in law, sometimes you have to do that. When a plaintiff sues a defendant, we only ask that he prove his case by preponderance of the evidence, slightly more likely than not. But that's not the standard upon which you want to decide whether or not you want to take a pill that your doctor's prescribed or a vaccine for anything, not just for COVID, but any kind of vaccine. You want a little bit more than substantial evidence, reasonable evidence, preponderance of the evidence. You want what we usually require in medicine, 95% confidence level.
I want, for vaccines that I'm going to start pumping into my kids, truthfully, I would like it to be beyond a reasonable doubt, because then I would feel good about it. All right, this guy's the best in the business. He's always looking out for the public. John Banzhaf, thank you very much. Public interest attorney extraordinaire from George Washington University Law School. Quick break, come back with some news of the day on a little afternoon Wednesday of Liquid Lunch.